So that's market specific. But another approach would be technique specific. You may have a moving average system that is like the turtle system that works on all markets. Or you may have a commercial public setup system like I teach people about that works on all markets. Then you're going to work that particular approach, which will work across markets. So you're going to learn a technique, a system, or a strategy real well, or you're going to learn one market real well. And I think that that will help you a great deal in your approach to trading the market. Most of us are not very focused when we trade. And you've got to be so terribly focused as a trader to do what you do. I cannot tell you the amount of money that I've lost because I get a phone call and I'm talking to a friend about something and I miss a trade. One time, my oldest daughter had a bloody nose. And being the great father that I want to be, right? I'm helping her with her bloody nose. I'm long copper. I don't put in a stop. $46,000 later, her nose stopped bleeding. And mine began. It takes that much focus. So most people that I meet, unfortunately, you know, you're really a great bunch of people, but you're a bunch of dabblers. You're not serious about this stuff. You really aren't. People call me up, they get my video course, and they say, well, do I have to keep charts? I say, well, yeah. Well, that's going to take some time. I say, yeah. Well, that's going to cost some money. I say, yeah. And they say, well, isn't there another way to do it? I say, not that I know of. And now with computers, it's a lot easier, but I kept charts by hand every market, every day for 30 years. And a lot of math behind it, too. We had to do all that by hand. And it takes that type of dedication. You just got to be a little wacko to do this. You have to be so unbalanced in the rest of your life to become a good commodity trader. You may not want to be. You know, you may not have any friends and neighbors anymore, but it does take being totally unbalanced in terms of your other interests in your life, because this does take some attention to detail and attention to the market. But I'll tell you, this is the most fun life I've ever had, being an unbalanced trader. So our last rule is you must be consistent in your application of all this stuff. Well, now let's talk about the attitude that I think you need to have. The first attitude is survive at all costs. The higher your survival level is, the better of a trader you're going to be. I mean, I can almost instantly meet somebody and say, yeah, you know, you might as well send your money to me or the Salvation Army because you're going to lose it. You got no survival instinct. You have to have this incredibly strong, powerful desire to survive at all costs, regardless of what it takes. And that's one thing that makes you work a lot harder, too. So I think that's an important characteristic to have as an individual. Your survival instinct must be very high. That's going to teach you really to get out of losing trades, to hold on to winning trades. It's just an attitude you need to have. Survival is what this game is about. Just like the game of life is about surviving. And that's the most important attitude. The next one is to constantly be afraid. I am scared to death of the markets. There's a great fighter. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a guy named Royce Lee. Do you know the Brazilian wrestler? Gracie, yeah, Gracie. He and his family are, you know, you see the Ultimate Fighting Championships you see where guys go kill each other, literally kill each other, literally do that. Never lost. And did an interview with him, and it was before one of his big fights, I think, in Japan, in Tokyo. And they talked to all these great big bruising guys, and they say, how do you feel? Oh, I'm not afraid of anything. I can take anybody on. They talked to Gracie, and Gracie says, I'm scared to death. I thought, wow, this is the guy who's never been beaten. His family's never been beaten, and he's scared to death. And he said, but I can use that fear to do what I'm supposed to do. Now, the interesting thing about Gracie, he's probably smaller than I am. And he beats up these guys that are 300-400 pounds. Black belt, karate, judo, kickers, whatever, street fighters, brawlers, boxers. He beat them all. He's really interesting. They asked him another question. Well, how do you do that? And he said, well, I first judge my opponent, and when I look at him, I say, if he's a rock, I'm going to become water. If he's water, I'm going to become a rock. So he looks at what he's up against and adapts to the situation, but he does it with total fear. And most of us don't have enough fear, so if we're not afraid, what do? We plunge, too many contracts, we don't use stops. We do everything wrong because we're not fearful. So I want to teach you to be terribly fearful, because if I'm afraid of losing on a trade, and let's say you're not afraid of losing, we both have the same trade on, who's going to protect ourselves the most? The guy who says, I don't have any fear of this stuff. You know, I got plenty of money. You're probably going to lose. But if I'm scared to death of it, man, I'm going to use a stop. I'm going to watch my trade. I'm going to wake up in the morning in time. I'm going to monitor what I'm doing here. But the person who has no fear will just kind of meander over here, and all of a sudden, boom, the disaster has struck. So I think you need to be terribly fearful of the market. And I could go on and tell you a lot of stories to make you fearful. Let me just say I've had 6 friends commit suicide because of trades. That's 6 people that are dead, no longer here. Great people, smart people, good trading people. One was a great trader, in fact, dead, suicide, because they didn't have any fear. Then they ultimately got in a position of large losses, and that's when they decided to pull the plug. So you got to be as fearful as you can of these markets. Great attitude to have. Another attitude that you're going to have to develop is to be able to score when you're behind in the game. It's certainly the greatest attribute that any athlete can have is to score when you're behind. It's pretty easy to score when you're ahead, or, you know, be on a roll. Anybody can be on a roll. But it's when you're behind in the game, when you've had 2 or 3 or 4 losing trades, that's what separates good traders from bad traders. So it separates good athletes from bad athletes. And you have to develop that attitude. Part of that attitude is saying, hey, I'm behind in the game right now. You know, I'm not doing well. And then you've got a choice, either chuck it in, go cry someplace, or say, the hell with it, man. I'm going to button up and go right at this thing again and get right back in the ring and give it my best shot. And that's the attitude that you have to have. You have to learn to score when you're behind. You have to learn to succeed when you've been in a losing position in the marketplace or a treading water position in the marketplace. You've got to have that attitude. Without that attitude, you're going to have a lot of problems because you're going to get behind, and we all do. If there's any guarantee in trading commodities, it's I guarantee you will have losing trades. The only people that trade are optimists. So you're all very optimistic people because you think you can beat the game that a lot of people say is unbeatable. You tell people that you're going to trade commodities, what do they say? Oh, you know, everybody loses money trading that. Isn't that interesting? Because you say, well, is that right? Everybody loses? Well, yeah, last year I read a government report, $485 million was lost trading commodities. Oh, isn't that great news? Somebody made $450 million trading commodities, right? They're looking at the negative side. But there's a positive side. There's millions of dollars lost every year just waiting for me to take from some schmuck that doesn't know what to do. And I love the public. They just contribute all this money every year. They say, oh, I love it. So you need to look at the markets in that respect. You're taking money from somebody else who doesn't know the basic rules. And lastly, you need to use only proven tactics. And I'm going to get to tactics and techniques in just a moment, but it astounds me. I was just flabbergasting how many people trade with stuff that's unprovable. Stuff that's just junk. Does not work, cannot be proven that it works, and they trade with it. Now that's a blow-away situation. Why that happens, I don't know, but people will read a book, read a magazine article, see a computer thing and say, well, this guy must be an expert, my stuff included. And say, well, he must know what he's doing, I'm going to do it. And they don't even stop to research to check, does this work or not? And in most instances of stuff, it doesn't work. As a matter of fact, I'll go on record as I have before, technical analysis sucks, by and large. And most of you are technicians, and myself included. But technical analysis is the biggest sham, the biggest ongoing con game of investor knowledge that I know of. Technical analysis doesn't work very well. It can work, but you have to be extremely careful with it. Excuse me, when we get into techniques and strategies, you'll see what I do is I find first an underwriting true situation, something that's there, is real, actually happens. Then I bring in the very last thing, technical analysis. Most people start with technical analysis, and then they get lost. I mean, you know, they're psychobabble, they're in a mental institution before much longer, or they're bankrupt, one or the other. Technical analysis is the most misleading, ongoing con game that I know of, and I've been part of it because I used to believe in technical analysis. And I shouldn't have, because I didn't have any proof that it worked. The only thing that works in technical analysis is the long-term trend-following systems. Those do work. Things like the turtle trading strategy, the long-term moving average approaches, those actually do work. The problem with them is they have huge drawdowns, and they're only right about 40% of the time, which means they're wrong 60% of the time. Most people that I meet in commodity traders don't like being wrong 60% of the time. But those systems will work, because they're just capturing trends. They're a little boring for most of you as well. So be very careful of any offer that's made to you. Does it work? You've got to prove it, and the best way to prove it is to look at somebody who's actually trading a method. And if it works, somebody, someplace is going to have real-time account statements. Says, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm making money, or I'm not making money. And most of us just believe all these glib comments, and then we get in trouble and find out later on it didn't work. And we should have asked that question to begin with. Okay, techniques. Well, that's what we're talking about. No warrior goes to battle with unproven weapons. You have to prove your weapons. You only wage war when you have an advantage. You must have an advantage if you're going to go to war, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You've got to have an advantage knowing what you're doing, even at a subsurface. A great story of that is Napoleon. Remember when Napoleon was captured and exiled to the island of Elba? I don't know if any of you have studied French history very much. Fascinating story. He's in Elba, and all the rest of Europe is deathly afraid of Napoleon, that he's going to get off the island some way or another and again wreak havoc and destroy and capture their empires. So they think they've got him pretty safe. In fact, even the Tsar of Russia, or king, whoever he was at the time, who was in control of the Elba Island, was threatened by the other European countries, and he said, I'll let the monster loose again if I don't get my way. That's how people were so fearful of this man. And eventually Talleyrand, who had been Napoleon's right-hand man, concocted a plan that nobody knew about except Talleyrand, and his plan was this. While the island is protected by a fleet of ships, he got a British ship to go in and got Napoleon off the island and got him back to France, and he came into Paris, and people loved Napoleon, and he gathered his army again, and he started to wage war again to conquer Europe. And within 3 months, Napoleon was back in exile and totally defeated for the last time. That was it. It was all over for Napoleon. But what Talleyrand realized was that the French economy was so bad, and that the support of Napoleon had waned so much that, yeah, he could win a battle or two, but that's the last he could do. He would never carry the day. He would meet his Waterloo, which is what he did. And Talleyrand realized he had an advantage in the game. He could beat the hell out of Napoleon by letting Napoleon go to battle. Wow. And everybody else, oh, don't let this guy out. But Talleyrand realized that he couldn't carry the game anymore, that he didn't have an advantage, and he let him just dissipate his own efforts. And then they put him on another island where he lived for the rest of his life. But he went to war when he had an advantage in the game, and that's what you need to have, an advantage in the game. And I want to talk then now about what you probably really came about. The unarguable advantages are. There are advantages that are unarguable in the game. Gee, where did that sheet go? I lost it. There are advantages in the game that are unarguable. They're there. They exist. They have always existed. And most people walk right by them. That's really funny. I don't have that sheet. Take a quick look here. Here we go. I do have it. All right. The unarguable advantages are based around seasonals, holidays, relationships, and special situations. I'm going to talk first about trade day of the month. When I first started trading in the 60s, Art and Merrill, that's like 60, that's a long time ago. In 1961, Art and Merrill wrote a book, Behavior Prices on Wall Street. And you know what the book said? The book said there are certain days of the month when stocks usually rally. Well, from 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, guess what? That stuff still works. Still works. So it's like a huge advantage in the game. Here's an interesting point. I did a study. You know, if you go to a university, they're going to tell you, well, stocks and commodity prices are just like a drunken sailor walking down the street not knowing where he's going, that all stock prices and commodity prices are random, and therefore nobody can make money at this. I go, well, am I just a lucky guy? How come I made millions of dollars trading? Because it's just luck? Because it certainly isn't intelligence in terms of being a brilliant person, a lot of hard work, but something doesn't add up here. So I did an interesting study, a very simple study. Anybody can do it. It's this. If you flip a coin, it's a fair coin, it's going to come up heads how much, what percentage of the time? 50%. You guys are good with math. You're right. Now, if I flip a coin 10 times in a row, it's heads. What's the odds that it'll come heads the next time? Still 50-50. And if you believe otherwise, go to Las Vegas. They'll welcome you. So stock prices, which can either be up or down for the day, should also be 50-50. Well, they're not quite 50-50 because there's an actual bias for stocks to rally. So it's about 52.6% of the time you close higher, and the rest of the time you close lower, because there is trend to the market. Well, that's interesting. But if that's true, then on any given day, all Mondays should be 52.6% of the time up, all Tuesdays 52.6% of the time up over a big set of data, all Wednesdays, all Thursdays, etc. Well, that's not true. It's not true at all. Mondays are up like 58% of the time. Some trading days of the month are up like 80% of the time. Whoa, now that's way out of sample stuff. Because remember, Art Merrill wrote the book in 1961 that said there's, anyway, generally said, you know, usually stocks rally at the end of the month, around the first month stocks usually rally. Now that's really fascinating stuff, because if the market is random, that shouldn't occur, yet it occurs month after month after month after month. So we have now an advantage in the game. Our first advantage, trade day of the month. And I want to be clear about this. We've done a lot of work on seasonal stuff over the years. I wrote the first book about seasonal tendencies in 73. Sure Thing Commodity Trading, How Seasonal Factors Influence Commodity Prices. And other people have carried my work. Jake's gone way beyond where I ever was with it. But a couple years ago, Ken Hornbrook and I started playing around with the idea of not calendar day of the month, but trading day of the month. Now, there are 22 possible trading days in a month. So now we can compare every trading day of January with every other trading day. The problem if you use the 15th of January, well, it may be a holiday, a weekend, the market's closed, it's a Saturday, a Sunday. So if day a month is, calendar day is 15, and you're supposed to buy tomorrow, but there's no calendar day 15 that's a trading day, what do you do tomorrow? We didn't know. So we put it in trading days of the month. That's also an idea that Sheldon Knight inspired a great deal. I think Sheldon may well have been the first person to come up with trading day of the week. It was either Sheldon or me, I don't recall which, because I forget a lot of stuff. But that's also a critical time period. So we're going to look at specific trading days, and there is a real humongous bias to trading day of the month. And I'd like to show that to you now. And it's so simple. It's there every month for you to trade. Every month. But people are trying to figure out some perfect system of the market. Let me give you an example of what trading days of the month can do. I'll take my favorite market, Treasury bonds. And we're going to buy Treasury bonds in this example if, I'm sorry, we'll start with S&Ps. This is S&Ps. We're going to buy on the 6th, we're going to buy on the opening of the 7th trading day of the month. So this 6 means this day of week, trading day of the month is day 6. We're going to buy on the 7th trading day of the month, and look what we get. 58% accuracy. We make $48,000 with an average profit of $293 with 58% accuracy. Doing nothing other than buying on the opening and getting out on the first profitable opening or with a protected stall or stop. That's all there is to it. It's not very brilliant. It just made a pretty good amount of money, and I'll bet most of you are not trading with 58% accuracy. The problem, we got a bit of a problem here, is our drawdown was $13,000. A little steep, but the basic thing we see, we have an advantage in the game here now. We know we have a time when prices rally more than they usually do, and we have a pretty decent average profit per trade. This is after $50 commission. So something's going on in here about that time of the month. Now, that doesn't mean I'll automatically buy on the 7th day of every single month, but I'm alerted, uh-oh, I got a trading opportunity here. Because this ultimately becomes a real thinking game. You just don't mechanistically follow things. Now we can move along a little bit farther. If we move to the very next day, which would be day 7, which means we're going to buy on trading day 8, look what happens. Look at that, what happens around that time of the month in the S&Ps. 60% accuracy, $322 a trade, makes $54,000 with only a $6,000 drawdown. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. I probably want to be aware of being long the S&Ps around that time of the month, every single month. And now if you want to take this study a little bit further, which I have, we'll go through the best days of the month, because those are not the best days of the month.